Very honoured and very grateful to Kun Sommai for making the effort to come to a place that I know some government ministers probably feel a little intimidated coming, and I haven't told Kun Sommai here, but I can't remember the last minister we had here, but we do know that the last former minister who was here actually got arrested in the club. We promise there won't be a fate like that tonight, but it is very important for this club to hear all sides of issues in Thailand, and very important for us to hear from the government. And it's tremendous that Kun Sommai has given us his time today. He is, of course, the finance minister in this government, a very challenging time with the Thai economy growing at a very abnormally slow pace and still afflicted by the effects of the political crises of recent years. He is not a novice to this job. He was deputy finance minister in the last government that followed a coup, and indeed was working together as he is this time round with Kun Priyatorn Devakun. And he is a career civil servant who probably knows the finance ministry better than anyone, and is a specialist in particular in issues like sovereign debt. Kun Sommai, I'll get you to make a brief address now, and then we'll have our members ask questions they want. Thank you very much. Can we have a round of applause, please?
Thanks, Jonathan. This is my first time in this club. It's very lovely club. I do think maybe I would like to be a member someday. So firstly, I would like to make a presentation on my prepared script, and afterward, question and answer. Okay, so it is my pleasure to be here tonight. I would go briefly about the economic situation in Thailand. So, you know, last year, I think all of you are working in Thailand mostly, so you are familiar with the our situation in 2014. The year that even I myself, I don't want to stay in Bangkok. I don't want to stay in Bangkok. So last year was not a particular good year for Thailand. And it was the year that we saw one of the weakest growth performance of our economy. After the coup, the economy started to expand, as evident by the third quarter, you know. In the first 6 months, GDP growth was minus. And in the third quarter, GDP growth of 0.6% was 0.6%. So despite greater political stability and various efforts to bolster growth, the whole year of 2014 is likely to grow, easy to remember, 1%. 1%. I'm glad this rate is better than some European countries, better than some of them. Export sector, which has long been the main driver of the economy, we could see no growth at all, no growth at all for the year 2014. You know, if you look back for the past 6-7 years, export growth of Thailand was somewhat over 12%. So the situation was, I don't know what to say, but it was attributed by the weak global growth, and I cannot deny by the very bad situation, what we call the political turmoil in Thailand. I have, in my life, I have seen that kind of turmoil many times, but not as serious as last year, where the turmoil remained over a year. Nonetheless, our export to neighboring countries have outpaced our flat overall export growth. In 2014, our export to Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam, what we call CLMV, have increased around 9%. 9%. And we expect that the export to our neighboring country would increase more. Therefore, it is vital for emerging economies such as Thailand to restructure and rebalance the economy by strengthening domestic demand as well as adopting a strategy to increase trade and investment, the flow of trade and investment without our neighboring country. And this is what we have done during the past few months. Let me talk about the achievements and ongoing policy so far. Since the government has sworn into office at the end of August, we have introduced several short-term measures to revive the domestic consumption and investment and long-term reform programs to address structural issues and lay down the foundation of the future. One of the issues, the very important issue that I have to be responsible for is the tax reform. The Prime Minister always talks to the public that I have chosen a very appropriate person to become my Minister of Finance, because his name is Sommai Phasee. His last name Phasee, you know what it means? It means tax. That's what he always talks to everybody, wherever he goes. So I would like to highlight some short-term measures to revive growth. We adopt budget deficit for fiscal 2015 and at the same time expedite disbursement of the current and previous year's budget. We also introduced income transfer program for rice and rubber farmers, totally almost 50 billion baht. We spent those money within 3 months. Now, the farmers have received the money already as part of the income. This is to stimulate household consumption of the poor segment of the population. On the long-term reforms, we have revamped BOI privileges, aiming to promote new and strategic industries. We have also cleared substantial backlog of BOI applications. As you may see in recent newspaper on BOI, that we have received now the application up to how much? 2 billion, something like that. Apart from that, we have reduced approval period for factory licensing. You know, anybody in the industrial sector, it takes in the last few years, it would take a long time to get the license from the Ministry of Industry. Now, the approval process would be shortened from 90 days to 30 days. And in the past 2-3 months, the Ministry of Industry have already approved over 500 licenses that are waiting in the past, been awaiting in the past. Custom duties of raw materials and intermediate goods have also been reduced to enhance competitiveness. The tax reform that will soon be introduced are the many taxes, as I cannot explain to you, but we are working what you call the inheritance tax now being considered in the session 2 in the parliament, where I have to work as a chairman of that committee, and it will be concluded within 45 days from now, and then submit to the for the parliament for the session 3, and then would be announced, and the effective date would take another 3 months. So we hope that this is May, March, April, May, June. By June, end of June, the inheritance tax in Thailand would be announced. But this would apply only to Thai nationality, not including foreign nationality. And the rate would be not high, not over 10%. In Thailand, we would collect the tax which the inheritance, which is over 50 million baht for each recipient. To strengthen Thailand as a regional hub is another goal that we are working on. We adopt a multi-pronged strategy. First, we have improved incentives for the establishment of international headquarters, what we call the IHQ, and International Trading Center, ITC, in Thailand. Many taxes have already will be reduced. So it's better than getting nothing with a higher tax rate. So we lower the tax rate at least 50% less for IHQ and ITC. Second, we have expedited the implementation of national single window and ASEAN single window to facilitate trade flows within ASEAN and beyond. Third, we have begun to develop special economic zones, SEZ, in 6 border towns. For example, Mae Sot near Myanmar, Aranya Pratet near Cambodia, Trat near Cambodia, Mukdahan near Laos, Sadao and Nong Khai, for example. These economic zone would aim to capitalize on production supply chain around border towns and high growth potential. We will have to set up the so-called industrial estate first with full facility. The government will also co-develop with Myanmar to support industrial development in Sommai Special Economic Zone. Firstly, we have to build up the road from Sommai to Thailand, of course. This is the southern part of Myanmar, and it would be very good to have a big port over there. So I think, last but not least, but we hope that all these measures will establish Thailand to be a hub for domestic and foreign investors to use us as a gateway to neighboring countries. Fourth, on infrastructure development. Infrastructure development is also one of the major undertakings of this government. aiming to improve the connectivity and linkages within GMS and ASEAN and within Thailand as well as Bangkok area. For GMS and ASEAN, we plan to build or upgrade railway lines and highways. I don't think many of you have ever been in have used the facility of railway in Thailand, but it is it could be the antique now. So it's the time for Thailand to develop railway. You agree with me? It's a good time for Thailand to utilize rail more than road, and we going to adopt the what we call the dual track based on the what you call 1.43 meters standard gauge. So the projects that we are going to work for to build should be the railway from Kang Khoi to Cha Cheong Sao, and Northeast Line from Mukdahan to Cha Cheong Sao and Rayong. Apart from that, we are going to build motorway from Bang Pa-in to Korat, Nakhon Ratchasima. This road we can get started in next fiscal year. For Bangkok area, we are also putting on effort to finalize the construction of 10 additional mass transit networks. 10 additional mass transit network. We also introduced measures to support the small and medium enterprises and improve access to finance by firstly further reducing SMEs income tax burden. Secondly, setting up SME private equity trust fund as an alternative financing source for startup and expanding SME. So those are the things that this government have already, the major activity that this government has also approved. Let's look at the outlook for next year, 2015. I believe the short-term measures have started to produce results. The economic recovery is gaining traction. We projected that the Thai economy in 2015 will expand. In fact, we think that it should be 4%. But our Prime Minister said, I don't satisfy with that. If you have to tell the public, you have to tell that it would be not less than 4%. I've heard from my ears, and so I think I have to try hard. I have to try hard. Not less than 4%. As for the long-term reform, I believe the Thai economy will move up the development ladder. You know, now in Europe they are talking about stagnation. In Europe, mostly. But in Thailand, I believe we have already gone through the state of stagnation already. The real stagnation in Thailand, the touchdown stagnation in Thailand was in July. May, June, no. Yeah, about May, before the coup took place. Uh, our reform agenda is not yet over. Let me outline some of the future plan. From now on. The government will continue to adopt expansionary budget in the short term. I mean, we have to be careful about it, medium term, but in the short term, next year budget, we plan for budget deficit of 390 billion baht, which is equivalent to 2.9% of GDP for next fiscal year, starting from October 2015. We also plan to implement long-term tax-generating revenue measure. Secondly, the government will continue to strengthen trade and investment flows within the region. Measures will be implemented to expedite regional connectivity, carry out the second stage of custom duties, and restructure and expand financial access for neighboring countries through bond market. We are working hard to act as the center for many transactions or investment. For example, we could be the center in selling electricity. Laos can sell electricity to Myanmar through Thailand, for example. I may not be too ambitious, but we are thinking that we could be, not now, but in the next few years, 3 or 4 years from now, strengthen on accommodation, try to improve on accommodation to strengthen, money market, as a financial center for Thailand, for Bangkok. We have to compete with Singapore, not easy. But even we cannot be number one, but if we could be good number two, we'll be pleased. I think we have a chance to do so because Thailand is big, and we are really at the center of ASEAN. Number 3, the government also plan to introduce measures to improve access to finance for SME and underserved individuals through Secure Transaction Act. The Secure Transaction Act, this is very new. I just signed today, and the proposal will go to the cabinet next Tuesday. Also, the master plan for access to finance will be proposed to the cabinet and the parliament soon. Number 4, the government plans to deepen the SOE reform through the supervisory board, particularly the SFIs, which are under the Ministry of Finance, will be restructured and will be more productive. The government, number 5, the government intends to create a more enabling environment for PPP. I just opened the seminar on PPP we try to learn from Australian experience. PPP, this program would include the establishment of National Infrastructure Fund in the near future. Number 6, the government has launched a plan to develop digital economy, as you have heard. This would relate to IT industries to move Thailand towards new frontier of innovation and knowledge. Number 7, the government also plans to improve governance standard. Not only plan, but now we do work hard on improving the GC in all areas. We plan to enact, for example, a legislation to consolidate on contingent liabilities incurred by previous governments. Previous governments mean many governments in the past. They have done this with, they enjoy doing this. So as a result, the country has end up with big contingent liabilities. So we have to do something to consolidate it. This would, of course, include the government, the rice pledging scheme debt, which is very huge. I remember we could reduce the big debt from last Tom Yam Kung crisis, if you remember, 1.4 trillion baht. That debt has been reduced by almost half of 1.4 trillion baht. Now we have to face with about 600 billion baht from rice pledging scheme. Anyway, the fiscalization of this, big debt, including some the subsidized, some debt from railway, from Bangkok bus company, for example, we fiscalize them, and as part of the government future budget. It would take maybe 15 or 20 years. I think 20 years would be the minimum. At the same time, to prevent this, we also plan to introduce the Fiscal Responsibility Act to ensure fiscal discipline is being adhered by future governments. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me emphasize that having good reform framework is not sufficient condition. The effective implementation of these policies is also critical. We cannot continue to adopt business as usual approach. In the respect, I have placed a high priority on proactive stance to ensure greater transparency, accountability, and good governance, especially in tax collection and project implementation. Whereas for me, these are my big responsibility. Thank you very much.
Good Sommai, thank you very much indeed. Time is pressing. Can I ask, for those who want to ask questions now, there's a microphone there. Can I make a priority for working journalists, please? Please keep your questions short and speak reasonably slowly. Don't make statements, please, if you can. Go ahead, Peter.
Peter Jansen, The Banker magazine. Khun Sommai, I was talking to a banker just a few days ago, and he was saying that in terms of the economy, if the government didn't start some of these infrastructure projects by second quarter, there were going to be problems. And he didn't specify which problems, but I'm saying, and one of the recommendations or one of the comments he had was that although the government has some good plans, good projects that they've announced, a lot of interesting infrastructure projects, implementation seems to be a real problem, and it might be a question of at the bureaucratic stage or the civil service stage that these projects are announced and then it's up to the bureaucrats to implement them. and nothing happens. They're not, it's not their skin, right? And he was suggesting that maybe some sort of a project management team was set up, sort of a super team to make sure these projects got going, and to set targets for these projects so that you could judge whether or not something was happening or not. I'm just wondering, I don't think most of the businessmen are too concerned about taxes right now. They're concerned about some sort of stimulus for the economy. And I'm wondering, is this a priority for you? Khun Priyathorn has announced several projects, and nothing seems to really be happening. So how can you make things happen? Huh?
Thank you for your good questions. Well, the first one in infrastructure projects, many of them now are underway. You can see that in Bangkok, mostly the mass transit project are under construction, and some of them we are going to open the bid for the private sector who's going to support to join with us. The private sector should buy the trains and then operate. We are prepared to offer the new this to them, and we are prepared to negotiate about the risk, the price, and so on and so forth. If you look at the mass transit, we would have the continue. This project almost finished, and another project is coming up, another project is coming up. So we have about, I couldn't remember how many lines, about 8 lines or 10 lines in Bangkok. And the railway project, double track, would come up almost at the same time, because we have around 4 routes at least. For us to build up the connectivity within Thailand, and then at the same time we can join with our neighbors.
Do you expect problems with implementation because of bureaucracy?
You don't have to expect the problem, problem is always a problem, but we have to solve the problem. So regarding the PPP program, we just had the new act 2 years ago, and now we have to revise some of them by issuing an additional act regarding PPP, where I am also been working. We are now working on that with Priyathorn. We would have one more meeting, and then the act would go when we submitting to the cabinet and parliament, and would be in a fast track, should be in a fast track, because this is very important act, for example. And anything now under the SOEs, they have to come to the super board. The super board, the Prime Minister is the chairman. I also joined
state-owned enterprises, right?
Yes, state enterprise. Railway, TG. Have you heard about TG?
Is it bankrupt?
No, we are going to sell the asset first before going to bankruptcy. If nobody buy them, I don't know. And we solved the problem of railways. Also the Bangkok bus company, no more authority. We going to put it back to the private sector. We have decided already. So the super board, not only the government or the minister like me, but we have some experts from private sectors joining that board. What's another question about tax or what? I forgot. Sorry.
His question was, should you make tax a priority when you need to stimulate the economy first?
We have to do both. You should have money first, okay? Or you have to make sure that you should have money, and then you can plan for the investment and spending. Thailand, we are still lucky because fiscal position is very strong, good, and our foreign exchange, we are in a very good position. Bond market, Thailand, we have to take a good care of our bond market. I'm the one who developed the bond market at the beginning. I love it very so much. So, so we don't have to, when we need money, there's no need to go to the bank like before. ADB chairman came to see me and I thought now Thailand can mobilize fund easily within your own country. So, but still keep the relationship with ADB. I think I asked him, what can I do? He said, maybe you should retain some loan with ADB just for our relationship. I said, that's a good idea. I'll try my best. But anyway, we also the member of, we are still working with the World Bank and other international institutions. Yes.
Can we have the next question, please?
Yes. Hello. My name is Jonathan. The military government has put forward a series of sweeping bills that would impinge greatly on digital security, and it would give the government the ability to surveil phones and computers without any court orders. I'm just wondering what impact that might have on business, in your opinion, particularly for foreign companies that depend on privacy. Thank you.
I asked this question to the minister who have asked him last Tuesday, to Minister Ponchai, who is directly responsible for this issue. He said this is a very, what you call the hacking, something like that. It's so, we have to be very, very cautious about this. And then he said, every country has to be careful about it. So that's why we have to put in the act. But we would tell you later on, we are not going to go to see any confidentiality in your business. He has a knowledge later. I asked him why you should put this kind of thing in the act. He said it's a must.
But it's much stricter than other countries.
Yes. I don't have much knowledge, but he said we are not going to violate, what you call it. There's some rule.
Nick.
I'm Nick Nostitz. Just a brief question. As the rice pledge scheme has been scrapped now, what is your government having plans for either replacing the scheme with another subsidy scheme, or how do you plan to improve the rice farmers living in the short term?
In the short term, thank you. This is a very good question. We have done already, even not enough fund, not much fund, but we spend 40 billion baht just to add into the income of the farmers. We know the price of rice that they can sell per ton is about 7,000 to 8,000 baht. And we know that the cost is 9,500 baht. So we give them 1,500 baht per rice, and we spend money for that. Next year we have to see into it. This doesn't mean that we have to do that for good. And also with cassava, we have automatic program to help them. Sugarcane, no problem. And another crop is rubber, that it's quite difficult because the supply is not over demand. But we have, I think, any country can ignore farmers. So in Thailand, we should not do that. We have to do more. This is our policy. But we have to be careful, anyway.
Are you going to take up for example, the scheme from the former Democrat government, which basically gives a payment on a top-up, basically on the market price? Would that be the scheme you'd introduce?
what we have introduced, we add some, add up the income, expected income. In some country like Malaysia, they have a more, they have better mechanism than Thailand. So they can give to anybody which is below the subsistence level, but they should be able to identify that on yearly basis. But in Thailand, we have to improve some program before we do that. But you know, farmer is a very important part of the population. You cannot ignore.
Okay, the next question, please.
I'm Michael Peel from the Financial Times. Kun Sommai, thank you very much for your talk then. I have two questions. One, a simple one, I hope. Regarding the rice scheme, we've seen these estimates that it has cost government more than $15 billion. Does that include the money that could be raised from rice that is in the warehouses, or does it assume that zero income will be generated from those stocks? And secondly, I have a general question about your agenda. The agenda you put forward is obviously very broad-ranging, and it reminded me of the kind of thing that a finance minister in a government that has just won an election would be saying, looking forward to 4 or 5 years in office. Does that mean you still expect to be in this position in 4 or 5 years' time? And if not, how are you going to ensure that what you're doing now isn't just a waste of time, because in a year's time, 2 years' time, there's a completely different government? In other words, you're starting projects that you know you might never finish through no fault of your own.
Yeah, before I forget, you know, I would like to answer your second question first. Okay. You know, if I think like that, it should be a dream. Firstly, because I'm not a politician, I cannot work with any political party. Secondly, I'm not a young guy, you know. I cannot work hard for so many years. No, cannot. But what we are trying to do in this government, we try to set the new or the new idea and thinking and a lot of things, you know. Also the projects, so on and so forth, for the next government which will come in the future. So what the Prime Minister has said, you know, his roadmap, that would be too short, as I told the press already. But when he asked, hey, you are not the one who can determine when we are going to have the election. I am the one. I said, yes, sir, you are the one. But I think I talk from my feeling, you know, a lot of things to be done. And
are you saying you'd like longer?
No, I did never told him that I like longer. But I see the whole thing, you know. I know where the legislation is working and on the reform commission working and the government. It would take a long time, you know. You look at normal government, 4 years. What could Obama do? So it need another term, 8 years. In Thailand would be the same. But the point, if we can, for example, if we can set up, work hard on anti-corruption, well, at least, you know, the next government would see a lot of things. If we can try to set up the program for CG, transparency, this is the thing that I'm trying to work really hard, so they can see what this government has been doing in the near future. And the project is another thing. Project is project. You can pick up any project, but this kind of thing is very important for Thai economy, for Thai society. And the first question,
the rice scheme, was it that the money that you say has been lost, does that mean not allow for any sales of rice at all?
That would be the estimate, about 500 billion to maybe 550 billion. That has been taken into account the loss in the rice in the stock of about 17 million tons.
You're saying 70 million tons are
based
unsellable.
And should be sell out in any form in the future, and I don't know how long will it take. So with some based on the assumption, some assumption about the money that we would get from the stock, not much.
What?
That would be the loss that we are talking about.
So what is the figure that
Let's say if we
estimate
can
be
for
raised from the
17
stock?
million ton from the stock, that we can get maybe 40 billion baht, then the amount of loss that we expect 550 should be 510 billion baht. So 40 as vis-a-vis 550, 40 is almost nothing, right? This is,
So the current estimate assumes no sales from the stock, but you're saying
Yeah,
you
with
don't
the-
expect to get more than 40 billion baht.
550 with the assumption that with the sale in the stock, but with any particular price.
But
We
not more than about 40 billion.
estimate around 40 billion, roughly.
All right, thank you.
The next question, please.
Hello, I'm Dan Gallucci. I also work for the Financial Times for a research service called ASEAN Confidential. A question just in general about household debt. I think this is one of the primary drags now on the Thai economy, and I haven't heard anything from the government on it. Of course, it's a hard thing for the government to impact directly. Have you got anything to say about household debt, sir?
Would you make clear a bit in your question about asking about the public debt or what?
No, the household debt.
Or household debt? Household also public debt, we have to pay for them, right?
Perhaps.
High household debt at the present time has been a result of the policy a year ago. What you call the car program, also, man-made program, the stimulating program that have been set up and performed previous year, that caused the household that at the moment, plus low growth, 1% growth, you cannot avoid, Now we have to solve the problem. The first thing to do the problem is more export, more work, more jobs. But we have to, in a way, you have to stimulate consumption. Then we have to provide consumption and money for consumption. That's why you can see that we increase the government employees in many kind of government employee, permanent one, temporary one, and state enterprise employees. We increase money for them. Let them have more income. The government have more deficit.
Sommai, do you have a follow-up, please? I had a question of my own, which was...
it will be last one?
Maybe one more, if that's okay, but I just want to get this one in. A big factor behind the opposition to the last government was the feeling about corruption. We still hear a lot about it. And General Prayut has talked a lot about the need to combat corruption. You know the cabinet in which you sit. Could you honestly say to everyone here that every member of the cabinet is free of the taint of corruption?
Free
of corruption, that everyone in the cabinet is free of corruption.
You should have a time frame, right? You talk. The one when I attended a meeting, some meeting outside Thailand, in the cocktail party, one finance minister asked me, he said he appreciate and he agree with the roadmap that created by the coup, and also he appreciate that we are going to discuss and talk about reforms in the legislation commission, reform commission. But I have one question. Is that what's your question? How can you trust your leader, who is the military man? Well, this is a hard question for me, very difficult one. And I said, I would suggest you. I cannot give you the answer. I would suggest you to see one KPI. That is, if you in the next year, if you can see next year or year half, if you could see the corruption scandal in this government. The first case may be the accident, but if you see up to the second case, then that would be the answer.
So that's the test, basically. We
Yes,
look out for
test.
corruption scandals.
Yes.
Harder to spot in a military government when you've got censorship and martial law.
Now, when I got back, anyway, when I got back, I told this story to my Prime Minister. I said, this is what we have to show to the outside world. If you are serious, no corruption, I agree with you. And then it's his job, his responsibility, not my responsibility.
I know Kun Sommai has another meeting. I'll take one more question, please.
My name is Alice Petren. I work for Swedish Broadcasting. I would like to know the exchange of words between the US and Thailand during this week. How does that affect business? That's my first question. In the fishing industry, this is my second question. In the fishing industry, there is a lack of workforce, and you came up with a proposal putting in prisoners in the business. From the outside, it looks like Thailand is not really attacking trafficking, which is, of course, a source of workforce. What is your comment on your work on trafficking?
What is that?
The first question was, have the problems with the US affected relations? The second one is, given the proposal to put prisoners on board fishing boats because of a shortage of labour, that seems to show your government is not serious about tackling trafficking. I don't know if you've got any comments on that.
Well, it's a big industry. That's why I asked you the question.
Yeah. But, it's hard to look over them because the sea that Thai fishermen have been going to find the fish. It's a very big area. And on top of that, we have many neighbor countries who are doing the same occupation. So, that your question is worth to think about, to go back to see. But the first one, I heard my Prime Minister who responds to the comment, to the question asked by U.S. As Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs, something like that, Secretary Foreign. He said seriously in the cabinet. He said the foreigner I used to ask him, when are you going to finish the martial law? Because otherwise, when I go and join the meeting outside, I don't know what to explain, how to explain to them. But his answer is very clear. He said, if they don't know like me. If I finish, if I stop it now, if something happened to Thailand, to Thai people, who is going to be responsible for me? Who is going to be responsible for that? But I would tell you, if you know the meaning of martial law in Thailand, this is the thing that you are concerned about. The martial law in Thailand for Thai now, they don't understand. Thai people, not middle class and down. They don't care, they don't understand. But why the Prime Minister would like to keep that? Because there are some gangsters, some gangs who want to fight with the government, with the military. Still, we got from the the intelligence. He knows more than us. He said, if and the guy, the gangster who would like to do bad things, they understand, they know what does it mean by martial law. They can catch them now. They can see somebody who do good, do bad things. That will come. What they call come and see the military and listen to the lecture, training, something like that. And then
you were
release
detaining,
them.
they were summoning former government ministers today. They're not gangsters, are they?
So they release them,
Does it affect-
most of them.
Yeah.
But if any case, they know that if they're going to put into the military court, that within couple days they go to jail. This is what they mean by, this is the real meaning of the martial law.
Do you really believe it's gangsters? Because it seems to be mostly people who want to voice opposition to the government who have been summoned.
I don't think so, but but in the sense that he might think, I don't think so.
But my question was,
But
what does
he has the responsibility to bring peace to the country.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, my question was, what does it do for business? You are saying that Thai people don't understand it, but you are finance minister, so I was wondering, for business, does it mean anything?
I worry about business. I worry about tourism.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah. That's why I talk with him frankly.
Does it martial law affect business?
Yes. I
Very
would say
negatively.
yes. Not much, but I say yes, not much.
So you would like it to...
My hometown is in Phuket. When I go to Phuket, I can see, good tourists, European tourists, they coming to Phuket. But because they said good for them, because now they are more secure. That if you ask the tourists, they have said, hey, it's more secure than before.
Thank you so much, Mr. Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And listen, I would like to give a very warm welcome to you, Kun Sommai. Thank you so much for coming, and please encourage your colleagues in the Cabinet to come and talk to us as well.
You have to invite them.
Quick question for you on the state